Welcome to Audio Library. In our deep dive today, we are immersing ourselves in a body of work that, honestly, sits right at the intersection of neuroscience, psychology, and, well, real-world results.
It's a foundational text, really.
Yeah.
It shifts a whole paradigm away from just focusing on, sheer willpower and toward understanding the automatic control systems that are already running the show.
We are cracking open Maxwell Maltz's landmark book, Psycho-Cybernetics.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And it is a game changer.
So if you've ever felt stuck or like you keep hitting the same invisible wall, repeating the same self-defeating patterns no matter how hard you consciously try to change, this deep dive is absolutely for you.
Right. Because Maltz offers this truly radical perspective. He basically treats the human brain and nervous system not as some mysterious, unpredictable mess of emotions.
Which is how it feels sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he sees it as a complex, highly functional, goal-striving mechanism, a machine.
So it's like psychology meets engineering. That's where the cybernetics part comes in, right? The science of control and communication.
Yeah. Exactly. Maltz provides evidence that your ability to achieve anything, really, is governed by an automated guidance system. And that system, that autopilot, is programmed by something deeply, deeply personal, your self-image.
So our mission today is ambitious. We're going to try and extract the blueprints.
The operating manual.
Yeah, the operating manual for your own mind. We need to understand the core mechanisms, the principles, and most importantly, the practical techniques that Maltz laid out.
Techniques that allow you to literally rewire your internal programming, to optimize that built-in guidance system.
And ultimately, to permanently expand what Maltz called the area of the possible in your life. We're going straight to the source material to figure this all out.
Let's do it.
Okay, so to really get this, to appreciate the breakthrough that Maltz offered, we have to start with where he came from. He wasn't a psychologist initially, was he?
Not at all. And that's what makes this so fascinating. He was a highly successful plastic surgeon practicing in the mid-20th century. His entire job was, reconstructing faces, features, and he hoped futures.
Right, so he's literally changing people's physical appearance. And his early work, a book called New Faces, New Futures, was all about this.
And in that work, he documented his first major psychological insight. He would correct these visible, often traumatic physical features. A severe scar from an accident, or maybe a feature someone had been ridiculed for their entire life.
And the results were pretty amazing at first.
They were dramatic. He saw patients experience these immediate, incredible personality changes. The shy, withdrawn kid who was bullied for his years suddenly develops confidence. He starts asserting himself. He stops flinching when people look at him.
And Maltz noticed a pattern there, right? A timeline.
He did. He observed that these personality shifts were measurable, and they often seemed to solidify within about 21 days after the physical change. So the logical conclusion was pretty simple.
Change the face, change the person.
Exactly. Fix the outside, and the inside will follow. It seemed to work like clockwork.
But then it stopped working.
But then came the pivot. The cases that just refused to follow the script. And this is where he truly becomes a pioneer.
He started seeing patients who, even after a perfectly successful surgery, their appearance was corrected, symmetrical, objectively normal.
It showed zero change. Absolutely no change in their personality or their behavior.
So they look good in the mirror, but they still feel inadequate, inferior.
They continued to act out the role of the scarred individual. It was baffling. They literally could not express the confidence that their new appearance should have given them. The feeling of being ugly or unworthy was still there, even when the physical evidence was gone.
So the physical reconstruction, it wasn't the key.
It wasn't the fundamental solution. The problem was deeper. He reasoned there had to be something non-physical, a scar on the personality that was still active.
And he gave that a name?
He termed this internal, non-physical concept the self-image. If this spiritual picture of yourself remained scarred or ugly, you behaved accordingly no matter what the mirror reflected.
That's the core realization, isn't it? The real key to changing your behavior, your confidence, your abilities. It's about reconstructing that internal self-image, not just the external one.
Precisely. And he defined the self-image as this deeply ingrained, often unconscious mental blueprint. It's a picture of the sort of person I am.
And that picture is a collage of everything.
Yeah, everything. It's a synthesis of all the data your mind has collected over a lifetime. Your past experiences, your successes, your failures. And this is crucial. How you interpreted how other people reacted to you. especially during those highly impressionable years of childhood.
So it's not just what happened, but the story you told yourself about what happened.
100%. And this leads directly to the mechanism that dictates our entire reality. He called it the consistency principle, and it is an iron law of the mind.
It's absolute, isn't it?
Completely. All of your actions, your feelings, your behavior, even what you believe are your natural abilities. They are all automatically programmed to remain consistent with this dominant self-image you hold.
So if you see yourself deep down as a failure type,
Your subconscious mechanism will find a way to orchestrate failure, even when a golden opportunity is sitting right in front of you. And the reason is chilling, because you literally cannot act otherwise. Your internal operating system values consistency above all else.
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, think about the classic example of the schoolboy who decides he's dumb in mathematics.
Right, so he struggles, he gets a poor grade. Now, for some people, that might be a wake-up call, but for him,
It's just proof. It verifies his internal belief.
exactly. It doesn't motivate him, it just confirms the story. And that confirmation strengthens the negative self-image, which creates this classic vicious cycle. The bad result proves the bad belief, which guarantees the next bad result.
And Maltz argues that this is where most of our limitations actually come from.
It is. This is why the self-image is so powerful. It's a limiting factor. It sets the absolute boundaries of your own accomplishment. If your internal blueprint says you're a person who can only earn X amount of money or achieve Y level of success, your subconscious will fight tooth and nail to keep you within those boundaries.
So the whole goal of Psycho-Cybernetics is, at its core, really simple.
It's profound. By changing and expanding the self-image, you simultaneously expand what Maltz calls the area of the possible. You're literally redrawing the map of your own personal reality.
Okay, so the self-image is the blueprint. That's clear. Now let's get into the technical side of things. The machine that actually executes that blueprint. This is where Maltz brings in the science of cybernetics.
Right. And cybernetics sounds complicated, but the core idea is pretty straightforward. It's the science of control and communication in animals and machines. Think of a thermostat or a guided missile.
A system that corrects its course to reach a target.
Exactly. And the big scientific insight here is that the human brain and nervous system operate in the same purposeful way. Maltz says we should see ourselves as having a conscious mind. That's the operator, the pilot.
And that mind is providing input to an automatic machine.
An automatic machine, which is your brain and nervous system. He calls it the servo mechanism.
And the most important thing to understand about this machine, this mechanism, is that it's impersonal.
Totally impersonal.
Huh.
It's a guidance system. It doesn't have morality. It doesn't have judgment. It doesn't have feelings. It just executes. It strives toward whatever data, whatever image you feed into it.
So this machine can act as either a success mechanism or a failure mechanism.
And it all depends on the operator,
Yeah.
you, and the quality of the input. If you consistently feed it clear, positive mental images of success goals, it functions faithfully as a success mechanism. It will guide you toward that goal.
And this is the really sobering part. If you feed it negative goals like fears, self-doubt, images of inadequacy,
It operates just as faithfully to achieve those objectives. It brings those negative images into your reality. It produces objective experiences of failure and misery. It is utterly, completely faithful to the input.
so if your deep down self-image is, I'm unworthy or I'm not capable, you're feeding the machine data that guarantees a negative outcome.
You are. Your creative mechanism processes this data, runs the calculations, and then delivers the result in the form of, negative feedback, physical symptoms, self-defeating behaviors. It's just doing its job.
So how do we direct this thing? What are the basic requirements for giving it instructions?
Two things are absolutely critical. First, it needs a clear goal, clear objective, or a problem to work on. If you don't give the servo mechanism a clear target, it runs in circles, it burns energy, and it generates anxiety.
Like a ship without a rudder.
Perfectly put. And second, and this is the fundamental part, the goals it seeks are mental images. They are created by your imagination. Your imagination is the input console for this entire system.
And the self-image is the main overarching goal image that it's always constantly trying to maintain.
Always. Which brings up the big difference between us and the rest of the animal kingdom. Every living thing has a success instinct, right? A guidance system for survival.
But their goals are preset. Survival, procreation, it's all instinct.
Their mechanism is limited to instinct. But man is a creator. We have creative imagination. This is the faculty that lets us formulate an almost infinite variety of goals. We can consciously direct our success mechanism far beyond just physical survival.
So when Napoleon said imagination rules the world, he wasn't just being poetic.
He was being literal. He was talking about the driver of all human activity and achievement.
Okay, so this distinction is really important for understanding how this mechanism works in practice, especially when it comes to solving problems. Maltz breaks it down into two types of operation.
He does. The first one is type 1. This is the one we're all familiar with as habit or muscle memory. Yeah. This is when the goal of the answer is already known.
And the machine's only job is to guide your actions to get there efficiently.
Right. Think of that self-aiming torpedo. The target is locked in, and it just steers toward it. For us, it's your hand automatically guiding a coffee cup to your mouth without you thinking about it, or playing a piece of music you've practiced 1,000 times. It just duplicates successful responses that it's already learned.
This explains why habits are so powerful, for good or for bad. Once that pattern is set, the type 1 mechanism just takes over and runs the program.
Flawlessly. But the second type, type 2, that's where the real magic is. This is the function where the goal or the answer is unknown.
This is the problem-solving function.
This is where the brain acts like an electronic brain. It doesn't just duplicate. It creates, it invents, it recalls.
A great little example is trying to remember a forgotten name.
Perfect example. You can't force the name into your consciousness, can you? The harder you try, the further away it gets.
But if you relax and just kind of give the mechanism the problem, what was that person's name?
It acts like a scanner. It sifts through millions and millions of stored memories until, poof, the correct name is just delivered spontaneously to your conscious mind, usually when you're thinking about something else entirely.
Or you look at the really big creative examples, like the naturalist Louis Agassiz. Wow. He was struggling for weeks to decipher this faint fossil impression.
He was completely stuck. So he put the work aside, and he basically instructed his mind to work on it underground. And the solution came to him perfectly restored in a dream. That's type 2 in action.
So the conscious mind gathers the data, sets the clear objective, and then it has to relax. It has to get out of the way.
And let the automatic mechanism do its work. So this incredible machine is running constantly. But its output, whether that's a confident action or a debilitating doubt, depends entirely on the image we give it to strive for. And the self-image is the primary target for that machine, 204/7.
Okay, so if the self-image is the master key, the billion-dollar question becomes, how do we actually change it? Maltz is really clear that it's not about sheer intellect, is it?
Not at all. It's not about just accumulating knowledge or gritting your teeth with willpower.
Right. I mean, you can know intellectually that you're a capable person or that you're smart or that you're worthy. But if your deep down feeling about yourself contradicts that.
The feeling wins. The feeling wins every single time. And that's because the self-image isn't changed by intellectual learning. It's changed by experiencing, whether that experience is real or, as we'll see, imagined.
So a child develops confidence not by being lectured about confidence, but by experiencing love and success. Self-confidence is an emotional state that's built on internalized experiences.
Exactly. But this creates a huge dilemma, doesn't it? A paradox.
The classic, you need experience to get a job, but you need a job to get experience.
That's it. If nothing succeeds like success, how could a person possibly gain self-confidence if their past is just a long story of failures? How do you break that cycle?
This is where Maltz's insight is just. It's genius. The discovery of synthetic experience.
This is the heart of it all. Clinical psychologists provided the scientific proof for what he was observing. The human nervous system cannot tell the difference between an actual experience and an experience imagined vividly and in detail.
Okay, let's pause on that, because the implications of that one sentence are staggering. You're saying that if I sit in a chair and vividly, in detail, imagine myself acing a presentation,
your body and your nervous system react as if that success actually happened.
Absolutely.
The nervous system operates based on what you think or imagine to be true. It doesn't question it.
This allows us to basically synthesize experience. Yeah. We can control the input we're feeding our own servo mechanism. We can literally create an artificial success history in the laboratory of our own minds.
That's the power of it. And this isn't just, positive thinking, woo, let's ground this in the evidence Maltz was looking at, because it involves real physiological change.
Right. So what were the controlled experiments?
Well, they had people use vivid imagination to improve their skill in things like dart throwing and basketball free throws. The group that did only mental practice improved almost as much as the group that did physical practice.
So the mental practice translated directly to physical performance.
It did. And the nervous system's responsiveness is even clearer in those experiments with temperature. Students who vividly imagined plunging their hand into a bucket of ice water, Their hands showed an actual measurable drop in temperature.
While the ones imagining a hot spot on their forehead showed a measurable increase in skin temperature in that spot.
Yes. And the hypnotic demonstrations are maybe the most dramatic proof of this core law. A human being always acts and feels in accordance with what he imagines to be true about himself and his environment.
It's undeniable. A hypnotized person told they're at the North Pole will shiver. Their body's thermostat mechanism tries to adapt to the imagined cold.
And if they're told a finger is a red-hot poker, the body's inflammation response kicks in. You can get real blistering. It's a real physiological reaction driven entirely by an accepted idea. Your body doesn't argue with the input, it just responds.
So if we can accept that we react to the image our mind holds, whether it's true or false, then we have the mechanism for self-change. And the application of this is mental rehearsal, imagination practice.
And we see it everywhere in high-performance fields. Take chess. Capablanca was one of the greatest players ever, but he lost his championship to Alekhine. And Alekhine had trained for 3 months by playing chess only in his mind.
He wasn't even at a board.
He was mentally rehearsing thousands of moves, creating this massive library of synthetic experience, building complex neural pathways, and preparing his body for the intense, long competition.
And in golf, it's legendary. Ben Hogan would mentally rehearse every single shot perfectly before he even took his stance. He was trusting his execution to muscle memory.
Which is really just the type 1 servo mechanism kicking in after the goal has been vividly imagined. But the story of Alex Morrison teaching Lou Lair to break 90 is even more incredible.
Right, because Lair did it with almost no physical practice.
Exactly. He achieved this huge breakthrough by spending just 5 minutes a day relaxing in an easy chair and visualizing the 7 Morrison keys of a perfect golf swing. The visualization alone was enough to implant the success patterns into his nervous system.
This isn't just for sports, though. Think about a job interview.
A classic high-pressure situation. The psychologist William Moulton Marston recommended what he called rehearsal practice. You plan your questions, your answers, and you rehearse the entire interaction mentally.
And even if the interviewer asks different questions, the practice isn't wasted.
Not at all. Because the confidence and the ability to ad-lib spontaneously are amplified. Why? Because your nervous system has already experienced a successful version of that interview.
And it extends to the arts, too. Pianists like Arthur Schnabel.
They often preferred to practice in his head. C.G. Comp recommended memorizing and playing new compositions mentally before you ever even touch the keyboard. It's the ultimate confirmation. Synthetic experience literally tattoos success patterns onto your nervous system. You can bypass the need for a lot of that initial, clumsy, physical practice.
Okay, so if the nervous system reacts perfectly to imagined experience, then the problem for most of us isn't a lack of ability. It's that we've accepted negative, false ideas about ourselves. Maltz says we're all, to some extent, hypnotized.
That's exactly his term for it, self-hypnosis. These are ideas we've accepted uncritically throughout our lives, maybe from our parents, teachers, friends, or even just from manipulative advertising.
And if an idea is accepted as true, it holds the same power as a suggestion from a stage hypnotist.
It absolutely does. And the academic proof for this is really compelling. Prescott Lakey's work with students is a perfect example. He showed that students who were failing a subject weren't unintelligent. They just saw learning that subject as inconsistent with their own self-conception.
So a student thinks, I'm the kind of person who is bad at Latin.
And that belief system makes it almost impossible to succeed. Lecky helped these students understand the difference between their action and their identity. Instead of, I am a failure, it became, I failed that one test.
It's a subtle shift in language, but a huge shift in identity.
A massive shift. He had a student who had failed Latin 4 times, and another who consistently misspelled 55 out of 100 words. After they changed that simple self-definition, they started getting straight A's and near-perfect spelling. They stopped fighting their own self-image and started building a new one.
This principle is perfectly illustrated in that story of the hypnotized salesman.
Oh, Elmer Wheeler's story. It's classic. This salesman consistently made exactly $5,000 a year. No more, no less. Didn't matter what the economy was doing.
And his company tried to get him to earn more, right?
They did. This is where you see the mechanism in action. The salesman consciously wanted more money. They gave him a better territory, a higher commission rate. And he still made precisely $5,000.
How is that even possible?
Because his subconscious self-image was fixed. He was a $5,000 per year man. The moment he got close to that invisible ceiling, his servo mechanism kicked in to maintain consistency.
And what did that look like in practice? It wasn't just passive, was it?
It was active. He would unconsciously find excuses to coast. He'd waste time on sure thing sales. He'd even get conveniently sick and have to take a week off right after a big sale just to make sure he didn't go over that $5,000 mark. His creative mechanism was faithfully executing the negative self-image.
That's incredible. And for the most shocking illustration of the power of a belief, we have to talk about the case of Mr. Russell and the voodoo curse. This is pivotal because it shows how a belief can cause actual organic change, not just behavioral change.
This story is wild.
Yeah.
Mr. Russell was a successful, impressive businessman. He had some cosmetic surgery, and his angry girlfriend cursed him with voodoo.
Which he probably dismissed at first.
Until he developed some minor scar tissue inside his lip. Then a malicious acquaintance, a so-called Dr. Smith, confirmed that it was the lethal African bug from the curse.
And he believed it.
He accepted that idea, and the result was catastrophic. Maltz describes him aging 20 years, almost overnight. His symptoms were real. Sunken eyes, shaking hands. He lost 30 pounds. His body was literally consuming itself, enacting the death sentence he had accepted in his mind.
And the reversal was just as dramatic.
It wasn't until Maltz himself surgically removed the harmless scar tissue, showed it to him, and convinced him he'd been tricked, that things changed. Once that false idea was replaced with the truth, Mr. Russell grew young again almost overnight. That is the raw power of an accepted idea.
It perfectly explains how we impose limits on ourselves. That football player in the hypnosis experiment who can't lift his hand from the table, he isn't physically weak.
Not at all. His voluntary effort to lift his hand is being countered by the involuntary contraction of his opposing muscles, all driven by the negative idea the hypnotist planted. He's literally straining against his own subconscious belief.
And the reverse is also true. The athlete whose normal grip strength is 100 pounds easily pulls 125 when he's told he's very, very strong.
The hypnotist didn't magically inject strength into his muscles. He just temporarily dehypnotized the athlete from his own self-limiting belief about what his maximum capacity was.
So this all leads Maltz to the true source of inferiority. Feelings of inferiority, he says, don't actually come from the facts.
No, the fact might be that you are a poor public speaker. The feeling of inferiority comes from your conclusion and your evaluation of that fact.
We compare ourselves against some false norm, usually another person's accomplishments, and we conclude that there's something fundamentally wrong with us.
And the dangerous part is that this often leads to the flip side of the coin, which is striving for superiority. If you're constantly trying to prove you're superior, you're still operating from that same core belief that you are, in fact, inferior. You're just trying to cover it up.
So what's the antidote?
The realization of a simple, self-evident truth. The truth of uniqueness. You are not inferior. You are not superior. You are simply you.
You're an individual, unique, and not in competition with any other personality.
When you truly accept that, the feelings of inferiority they vanish. Because the false measuring stick you were using to beat yourself up with is gone.
So if these are just false beliefs, they can't be changed by force. They have to be changed by other, more rational ideas.
Exactly. Ideas are changed by other ideas. Maltz suggests using rational thought to find the inconsistency in the negative belief. You force that fear-stricken salesman to ask himself, why do I mentally cringe and crawl in front of a client when I would never physically get on my hands and knees?
You expose the absurdity of the internal behavior.
And that allows a more self-respecting, rational idea to take its place.
All right, so Maltz didn't just diagnose the problem. He provided a very practical template for the solution, encapsulated in the 7 essential components of the successful personality. It's the acronym SUCCESS. Let's break these down.
Let's do it. And it's important to remember, these aren't traits you're born with. They are attitudes you cultivate. The first S is a sense of direction.
This goes right back to the cybernetic mechanism. Man is a goal-striving being. If you don't give the servo mechanism a clear goal, it just creates anxiety and wastes energy.
The story of the advertising executive who lost his confidence after getting a promotion is the perfect example here.
Right, he gets the big title he was working for, and then his confidence just evaporates. Why?
Because he stopped setting aggressive personal goals. He achieved his goal, and then his focus shifted entirely to meeting external expectations, and more importantly, defending his new status. He was aiming for maintenance, not for new achievement.
He was trying to function without a clear internal direction. His system was running without a compass.
And the only thing that restored his confidence and happiness was re-engaging as a goal striver, setting new, aggressive goals that gave his servo mechanism a clear target to work toward.
Okay, next up is U for understanding. And this seems to hinge on good communication and acknowledging the truth.
which requires separating objective fact from your subjective opinion. This is huge in relationships. We have to internalize that no one, including ourselves, reacts to things as they are. We react to our own, often mistaken, mental images of things.
The example of the husband cracking his knuckles is great. The fact is, his knuckles are cracking.
That's the fact. The wife's opinion is, he does that just to annoy me. And the emotional reaction that follows is based entirely on the opinion, not the fact.
So to achieve real understanding, Maltz says we have to try to adopt the other person's view, assume they're sincere even if they're mistaken, and ask, how does this look from their side?
It takes the emotional charge out of it and allows for rational communication to happen.
The first C is courage. And this isn't about the absence of fear.
No, it's the courage to act despite fear, recognizing that nothing in life is absolutely certain. The person with a strong self-image has the courage to bet on their own ideas.
He says this is often the hairline difference between success and failure, just the willingness to take a calculated risk.
And he even suggests that the universal urge to gamble might actually be a frustrated, misdirected instinct. The innate human desire to bet on our own creative potential, which we so often suppress out of fear.
The second C is charity, feeling charitably toward others. How does this fit in?
It's the necessary prerequisite for healthy self-regard. Maltz argues that your feelings about yourself and your feelings about other people are deeply connected. If you diminish the worth of others, you must inevitably diminish your own.
So charity ensures you're dealing with reality. It means recognizing that people are complex, deserving of respect, and can't just be treated like objects or machines.
And that attitude, that respect for external reality, helps foster a healthy and positive internal self-image.
All right, moving to the second half, E is for esteem, appreciating your own worth.
Maltz considered low self-esteem to be the deadliest pitfall. He believed it cripples your capacity more than any physical ailment ever could.
And it often wears a disguise, doesn't it? It's not always someone who's meek and quiet.
Not at all. It often manifests as arrogance, or this craggy assertiveness, or even the appalling domestic tyranny that was observed in historical figures like Thomas Carlyle. These behaviors are defensive, born from a deep-seated self-doubt and the constant need to prove your worth to others.
So what's the secret to raising genuine self-esteem?
It's counterintuitive. He says you should practice appreciating other people. Show respect for any human being simply because they are a unique creation. When you practice external appreciation, your own sense of self-worth will naturally rise.
So real self-esteem comes from appreciating who you are, not just from a list of what you've done.
Exactly. It's about your being, not just your doing.
The next S is self-confidence, and this is built on the experience of success.
Right, so if you lack it, you have to consciously manufacture it.
Yeah.
You do that by accumulating a series of small, controlled successes.
Like how fight managers carefully match their boxers, giving them a series of winnable fights to build their belief and their skill.
We have to apply that same principle to ourselves. Arrange things so you can succeed in little ways. Gain the feel of success. Give your servo mechanism a successful pattern it can then use as a template for bigger achievements.
And finally, the last S is self-acceptance. This seems to be the foundation for everything else.
It's the key to self-realization, accepting yourself as you are right now. Faults, strengths, the whole package. True growth comes from this realization, not from some strained effort at self-transformation.
And this requires a critical distinction.
You have to separate yourself from your behavior. You may have made a mistake, but you are not a mistake. The actual self is, by its very nature, imperfect. It's always moving toward an ideal, but it never quite arrives.
So healthy self-acceptance is the emotional tolerance of that imperfection in yourself and in other people.
Without it, you're locked in this painful, unrealistic battle against reality itself.
Okay, so we have the blueprint, the self-image. We have the mechanism, cybernetics, but Maltz throws in a caution. Modern life, with its constant pressure and anxiety, can jam the whole system. We need what he calls the gospel of relaxation.
Yeah, the analogy is perfect. If you consciously try to steer a bicycle by thinking about every little movement, you'll wobble and fall. If you grip the steering wheel of a car too tightly on a smooth road, you'll constantly overcorrect.
So we have to learn to unclamp the intellectual and practical machinery. Let it run free after we've set the goal. Strained, conscious effort actually defeats the automatic mechanism.
And this is the principle of creative release. Good ideas, solutions, creative breakthroughs. They rarely happen during that high-pressure, intense, head-down thinking phase.
They happen in the period of mental relaxation that follows all that intensive work.
Bertrand Russell's technique is the perfect example of this. He would focus intensely on a complex problem for hours or even days. He'd gather all the data, immerse himself in it, and then he would consciously give orders for the work to proceed underground.
He just turned it over to his subconscious.
And he'd come back to it months later and find the work had been done. The answer would just be there, delivered spontaneously.
And this applies to physical skill, too. Skill in any performance. Hitting a golf ball, playing a concerto, even just having a fluid conversation. It's spontaneous. It's natural.
It is not consciously sought out, moment by moment. It requires reaching a point where you can relax and let the job do itself through you. You have to trust the subconscious habit mechanism that you've already programmed through practice.
To fight the anxiety that comes from feeling overwhelmed, Maltz really focuses on concentrating on the present moment.
Because anxiety is often the result of this false mental picture we create. We feel like dozens of tasks are all pressing in on us at the same time.
But that's not reality. We need to remember the lesson of the hourglass.
A beautiful image. No matter how many grains of sand are in the top chamber, they can only pass through that narrow neck one at a time, in single file.
And our tasks and problems, no matter how numerous they seem, always come to us in single file as well.
By concentrating all of your awareness and responsiveness on the one thing you were doing now, you cut off that feeling of being rushed. You eliminate the anxiety about what lies next.
Now, for immediate emotional relief, let's talk about the practical application, the do-it-yourself tranquilizers.
The fundamental issue here is a bad habit he calls over-response. We are conditioned to over-respond emotionally to every external stimulus, the critical email that pops up, the annoying traffic, the phone that rings.
They constantly interrupt our emotional course.
And Maltz observed that our inner disturbance is almost always caused by this habit of over-response.
So is ignoring your worry or your annoyance just suppressing the emotion? How is non-response different from avoidance?
That is a critical distinction. Suppression is a voluntary, strained effort. It consumes energy and it jams the system. Non-response is a conscious decision to withhold emotional investment from the disturbance. You acknowledge the external event, but you refuse to allow it to change your internal climate.
And the technique he recommends for practicing this is the quiet room technique?
Yes. You build a detailed mental sanctuary, a quiet room in your mind. You furnish it with restful colors, blues, light greens, golds. Beauty, simplicity, order. This is your mental vacation spot, your emotional decompression chamber.
And the purpose isn't to solve problems in there.
No, the purpose is to escape daily pressure. You consciously leave your duties and your decisions outside the door. By periodically retiring into this room mentally, you give your system the necessary mental vacation it needs to restore itself.
He also suggests using symbolic pictures.
Like visualizing Old Faithful, the geyser, to mentally picture your emotional pressure just blowing off steam harmlessly instead of letting it build up inside you until it explodes.
So the ultimate tranquilizer is the practice of non-response.
Refusing to respond emotionally to a disturbance is the spiritual application of cybernetics. Marcus Aurelius taught this thousands of years ago. Be like the promontory against which the waves continually break, yet it stands firm and unmoved.
Worry is just responding emotionally to negative mental pictures of what might happen. It's fighting straw men, as Maltz puts it.
And since your nervous system treats these imagined fears as real, the only appropriate emotional response is to totally ignore them. When you feel that fear bell ringing in your mind, you practice saying to yourself, I am letting the telephone ring.
Yeah.
You refuse to pick up the emotional charge.
Just as there are symptoms of success, Maltz codified the symptoms of failure into another acronym, FAILURG. And he saw these as red flags, signals that our servo mechanism is working toward a negative goal.
And that's the key. They are signs of failure, not permanent personality flaws. They are just feedback. The first F is frustration, the emotional feeling you get when your goals are thwarted.
He sees this as a fundamentally childish mechanism.
It is. It's a hangover from infancy. When you were a baby, crying or throwing a fit got you what you wanted. It solved the problem. Frustration in adulthood is applying that same mechanism, hoping life will magically solve your problems if you just feel defeated enough.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, especially for people who believe they're unworthy. They unconsciously act to fail, and then the frustration they feel confirms their negative belief.
The necessary action is to learn to tolerate frustration without getting emotionally derailed. You have to recognize that an occasional setback is just natural feedback. It's part of the process.
A is aggressiveness, but misdirected.
Right. This is energy that should be used for goal accomplishment, but instead it gets turned into destructive channels. It turns inward, leading to ulcers, high blood pressure, excessive smoking, or it turns outward as irritability, rudeness, and constantly finding fault with others.
Because if the underlying goal has been thwarted, that energy has nowhere productive to go.
The correction is simple. Use that aggression up as it was intended. Use it in working toward a productive goal. Maltz viewed purposeful work as one of the best therapies and tranquilizers for a troubled spirit because it harnesses that aggressive energy constructively.
Okay, I is for insecurity.
This is based on those inner beliefs of inadequacy, and we often create this insecurity ourselves by using a false measuring stick. We compare our imperfect, actual abilities to some ideal, perfect self that doesn't exist, or to someone else's status. And the inevitable gap makes us feel inadequate.
This explains that dangerous phenomenon he calls underdog psychology.
It does. Once a champion starts thinking of himself as the champion, he's in trouble. He stops fighting to do something, and he starts fighting only to defend his status.
That defensive, superiority-seeking mental attitude is self-defeating.
And it often leads to a loss of the will to win. He's playing not to lose instead of playing to win.
L is for loneliness.
And chronic loneliness, he argues, is often an alienation from one's real self. It's cutting yourself off from contact with life. Because you don't accept yourself, you project that non-acceptance onto others. Your social interactions aren't satisfying, which just reinforces your isolation and drives this vicious cycle.
So finding acceptance from others is often a byproduct of accepting yourself first.
Exactly. U is for uncertainty.
This is a defense mechanism. It's a way of avoiding mistakes and responsibility based on the fallacy that if you don't act, you can't have a negative outcome.
The person striving for impossible perfection is terrified of decision-making, because being wrong would shatter their fragile self-image.
But we have to reject that quest for 100% accuracy.
We do. Babe Ruth holds the record for both the most home runs and the most strikeouts. Success comes from acting, making mistakes, and correcting your course. Like a guided torpedo, progress is achieved by continually correcting your errors, not by avoiding movement altogether.
R's is for resentment.
Blaming your failure on external factors, society, injustice, the brakes. Maltz insists this is a deadly poison to the spirit. It consumes a tremendous amount of life energy.
Harboring resentment forces you into the victim role.
And that creates a negative self-image of yourself as a victimized person who is constantly looking for external reasons for your unhappiness. The goal-striving person has to recognize that resentment is caused by their own emotional response and reaction, not by the external event itself.
By taking responsibility for your own success, you eliminate that passive victim role.
You have to. And the final E is emptiness. This often afflicts people who achieve all the external symbols of success, the money, the status, the recognition, but they find the treasure chest is empty.
They lose the capacity to enjoy it all.
Often because of an inadequate self-image that feels, deep down, unworthy of the success they've achieved. The cure is always re-engagement. Happiness isn't a prize you earn at the end. It's a symptom of normal, natural functioning toward a positive, worthy goal. The moment you remove the goal, the mechanism stalls, and that feeling of emptiness sets in.
Since life is going to throw crises at us, Maltz dedicates a lot of attention to how we react under pressure. A crisis is two-pronged. The wrong reaction can rob you of your ability, but the right one can release untapped power. And the core strategy is practice without pressure.
The research on this is so compelling. Studies showed that trying to learn a new skill under intense crisis pressure, what he calls overmotivation, actually retards learning. Dr. Tolman's experiments with rats in a maze are a great example.
The rats that learned the maze when they were really hungry, that was the crisis. They developed a narrow, restricted cognitive map.
So if their original path was blocked, they just became hopelessly frustrated. They couldn't improvise. They only knew one way.
But the rats that were allowed to practice under non-crisis conditions, just exploring the maze at will, well-fed.
They developed a broad, flexible mental map. So when they were faced with a crisis later, they could improvise immediately and find a new route. The principle for us is identical. Pressure-free practice builds flexibility and the ability to improvise.
This is why fire drills work. You learn the calm, efficient actions in a non-crisis setting, and it embeds the response pattern. It's also the basis of shadowboxing in sports.
The great boxers knew this instinctively. Gentleman Jim Corbett, getting ready to fight the legendary John L. Sullivan, practiced his left jab against a mirror over 10,000 times.
He was embedding that precise action pattern in his nervous system without the pressure of an opponent or a screaming crowd.
Gene Tunney did the same thing. He fought an imaginary Jack Dempsey hundreds of times. This non-crisis, relaxed practice builds a successful self-image that automatically carries over into the real high-pressure situation.
We see the same thing with marksmen using dry shooting. They practice with an empty gun to avoid the purpose tremor that's caused by anxiety about the result. It embeds a calm, deliberate action that executes flawlessly when the stakes are real.
So when a real crisis hits, Maltz stresses the need to cultivate the winning feeling. You have to react with an aggressive, goal-directed attitude. Focus on the challenge, not the menace.
The story of Hugh Casey, the calm relief pitcher, is a great example. When he entered a tight game, he only focused on what he wanted to happen.
The perfect pitch. Not on what the batter might do. He was goal-oriented, not fear-oriented. The excitement you feel before a crisis isn't necessarily fear. It's just reinforced emotional steam. If you consciously direct that steam toward the goal form, adopting an attitude of fight or conquering, it reinforces your courage and your strength.
To manage excessive excitement, especially anxiety, Maltz recommends the technique used by Bertrand Russell and Thomas Carlyle. Deliberately confront the worst that could possibly happen.
Russell's method was to face that worst-case possibility steadily and then use rational thought to provide sound reasons why it wouldn't actually be a terrible disaster.
Once you achieve that rational distance, well, after all, that wouldn't matter so very much. The intense worry diminishes.
And it's often replaced by this strange sense of exhilaration. You've taken away the imagined power of the catastrophe.
This brings us right back to the power of imagination, and specifically to the idea of positive worry.
Since worry is just negative mental imagery, repeated vividly, we should practice positive and constructive worry.
The scientific basis for this is that successful patterns are tattooed as electrical engrams in your brain. So to cultivate that winning feeling, you have to practice positive mental imagery. You mentally play with the idea of complete success.
You start gradually. Suppose it's possible. Then you vividly imagine the successful end result until the appropriate feelings, self-confidence, excitement, courage, start to manifest themselves. This reactivates the successful action spontaneously, and it enables you to just, as he says, swing the clubs and let nature take its course.
So Maltz brings this whole discussion home by asking the most vital question of all. Are our negative patterns, our negative self-images, permanent? Are we doomed by our past?
And the scientific findings from neurologists like Sir Charles Sherrington and John Eccles suggest this incredibly optimistic answer. No. The recorded patterns, the engrams in our brain, are not fixed or permanent. They can be changed, modified, or replaced.
Which means the relationship between our past and our present is dynamic. The past influences the present, yes.
But the present clearly influences the past. By focusing on our successes now, we strengthen those positive neural engrams through use. And by consciously choosing to ignore our past failures, we weaken those negative engrams through disuse.
This is the ultimate freedom of choice, then. We aren't defined by past traumas or negative childhood experiences.
We bear the responsibility for where we go from here. We have the power to stop playing the same old broken record of past injustices or mistakes simply by choosing to focus on creating new, successful, synthetic experiences in the present.
And this choice, this active engagement as a goal striver, has profound biological and physical implications. This leads to Maltz's overbelief regarding what he called the built-in youth serum.
He was building on the medical research of his time, particularly the work of Dr. Hans Selye on stress. This research suggested the existence of a basic energy, a life force or adaptation energy, that maintains our health, heals our wounds, and determines the rate at which we age.
And the failure mechanism, chronic stress, frustration, resentment, hostility, it literally adds insult to injury by consuming this essential adaptation energy. It makes us old before our time.
Conversely, Maltz observed that the rapid healers among his surgical patients consistently shared two characteristics. First, they were fundamentally optimistic, positive thinkers. And second, they always had some compelling reason or need to get well quick.
Something to look forward to? A positive goal.
Optimism, confidence, faith, cheerfulness. They all seem to accelerate healing and postpone aging.
So, in essence, the success mechanism is the body's built-in youth serum.
Goal-striving behavior keeps us biologically young by ensuring that maximum life force is available and is being utilized efficiently toward a positive end.
We see the power of belief over biology and the placebo effect. Sugar pills show high improvement rates simply because the patient's positive mental attitude and their expectation of a cure stimulate the body's own natural defense and healing mechanisms.
So thoughts bring about organic changes, not just functional ones. And Maltz concludes that if life adapts itself to act as a means toward an end, then if we consistently place ourselves in a goal situation where more life, more energy, and more success is needed, our system will respond by providing it.
So if there is one core idea to take away from this entire deep dive into psycho-cybernetics, it has to be this. The self-image is the master key to your entire life. It directs an incredibly powerful, automatic, goal-striving mechanism.
And you don't influence this mechanism by willpower that just jams the gears. You influence it through vivid imagination, through synthetic experience, and by consciously managing the beliefs and the goal images you feed into it.
If we can learn to embrace self-acceptance, to ignore the negative feedback from the past, and to practice the feeling of success without pressure, we activate that built-in guidance system.
And that leads to a really profound final thought that ties the psychological directly to the physical.
Maltz confirmed that our mental attitudes influence everything from the expansion of our capillaries and our resistance to disease all the way to the speed of our recovery from surgery. We know the body has a physical thermostat that maintains a constant internal temperature regardless of the weather outside.
So consider this. If the human mind possesses a spiritual thermostat that's capable of maintaining a constant inner emotional climate confidence, calm, cheerfulness, regardless of the external storms of criticism, stress, and crisis, what untapped potential could you access?
And Maltz suggests that power is accessed simply by practicing non-response, by refusing to take on the negative emotional climate of your environment.
That choice, the choice to master your internal climate, is the ultimate expression of self-determination. And it's the path to truly expanded possibilities.